Namo Ramana. Welcome back to the recommencement of and continuation of Vivekachoodamani. We have been following the translation of Bhagavan of the Vivekachoodamani verses, the original being by Adi Shankara. We are just going to briefly look at the last part of the talk I had forwarded in the group, which is about the self. And from there on, we move on to the segment where the Acharya is going to show us how to discriminate between the non-self and the self. The self having been pointed out in the preceding few verses, the conclusion of which we are going to briefly recap. Then we go on to a segment where the Acharya is going to deal with the nature of the non-self, but not stop there. Also take us to what is the dropping of the non-self. What is the discrimination between that non-self which has been described and the self which was pointed out, and asking us to use the intellect to drop the non-self and hold the self. That is what is ahead. We will be trying to cover verses 156 to 185, if that's possible, or slightly lesser than that, if that is not entirely possible. But before going into our day's topic of discrimination between non-self and self, let's briefly touch upon the last segment of our the final of the last previous session we had somewhere in the end of September of 2025. For that, we cover 151 to 155 verses in the original work. There may be a few verses overlap depending on how they have picked up for translation between the versions, but that is not significant. The differences are not significant. So we go ahead with the numbering as I am going to narrate. But if you have some other version of the translations, you may find a little bit difference in the numbering. But since you are aware of the contents, you shouldn't have trouble in looking it up in the version you are having. The last segment we saw was that the self is always present. The self is ever self-luminous, but is covered up by the five sheets. And the analogy that the Acharya gives is very, very useful, is very, very purposeful. He says it is like a pond which has clean water, usable water, refreshing water, but is covered up by weeds. We would have seen that in the modern day lakes around Bengaluru also, that when the lakes have not been tended to properly, we will find a lot of weeds on the surface. And the Acharya says the weeds have to be just removed for the clear water to be perceived. The advantage of this analogy is that the Acharya is not asking us to wade through the entire area of space and time, but is asking us to merely remove the sheets which have covered up our inner consciousness called the Jivatma. In one sense, our Atma has put on 5 different spectacles, 5 different veils of perception through which it is perceiving the truth, and therefore the distortion. That is the analogy of weeds covering the fresh water. We are not able to perceive the self because we are used to wearing these 5 different spectacles that we have been endowed with through the non-self. And what are these 5 different sheets? They are the Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, and the Anandamaya koshas. One has to open up these koshas by our inward journey, by discrimination and the non-attachment. We have to remove these weeds, and the ever-present self is available for us for experiencing directly. Know the self distinct from the body and free from all forms, like the stalk of a grass in its sheaths of leaf, says the Acharya. Another example is that that it is in the kusa grass, the outer leaves have to be removed before that inner stalk is found. Similarly, the outer layers of the koshas are to be removed. The self is eternal, pure, single in its essence. Ekam, Aksharam, Hridi Nirantaram. These are the qualities. I am referring to the Muktagatrayam so that we will be able to remember the nature of the self. Ekam. Whenever there is a duality, we should understand we are in the area of non-self. Whenever there is a dual experience, that there is a perceiver and perceived, there is an experiencer and experienced, there is a seer and seen. Immediately we have to understand we have work to do. We have to do the drishya vilaya, as Bhagavan says, that the false non-self has to be removed. Before we go into the discussion of the verses, a quick look at the Drigdrishya Vilaya that Bhagavan gives in the talk number 25. Each one of us should go through that. It's only 3 paragraphs long, and that should be recorded in our diary. Whoever is practicing Atma Vicharam will be greatly helped by those 3 paragraphs. How Bhagavan looks at Drishya Vilaya is something we will not find in any other scripture or any other support book. Because he says that the relative subject facing the object is the serpent and the rope. That the real rope is that the self alone is there. Ekam, Aksharam, Hridi Nirantaram, Bhasate Swayam. But how do we experience? We experience our world as seer and seen. And Bhagavan says that there is an underlying unity between this, the seer and the seen, the relative identities as subjective identity and objective identity. And the underlying unity, he says, there is a unity between me and whatever I see. And we should recall that that is what Bhagavan does when he comes to Arunachala. Arunachala, he sees with his eyes, but then he doesn't stop there. He inquires, Kandavan evanana, Karuthinul nada, Kandavan hindrida. The seeing self vanishes. The self-luminous self is available as the Nindra Porul, as the Ulla Porul, as the one self between Arunachala and Ramana. Between the seer and the seen, there is only Arunachala Ramana. There is no Ramana separate, there is no Arunachala separate. And Arunachala is always available before us. And the underlying self-attentive self is always available. All one has to do is who is seeing. From seeing self, one should identify with the underlying self-luminous self. We are able to hold the Virat Swarupa of Ishvara directly. The whole of the sensory experience is substratically supported by the underlying self of Ishvara. On the waking state, Mandukya Upanishad calls that Ishvara Sthiti as the Virat Swarupa. And Bhagavan says, the Drigdrishya Vilaya helps you to hold directly there, even though it may be with effort. Then the questioner asks, cannot we experience the self of all even when the Drik and Drishya are there? Why should the Drishya be completely eliminated? Bhagavan says, as you keep eliminating the relative object and relative subject, the Drik will be subtler and subtler. It will become subtler and subtler till only the self-luminous self remains. The next question arises, why should we eliminate the seen at all? And Bhagavan goes ahead and says, the seer and the seen is like the serpent. It is an illusory, non-existent division in the being. The pure being has no division as subject and object. Therefore, Bhagavan says, so far as you see the seen, the truth has not been realized. Then the questioner asks another question, how will we know that the finality has been reached? Then Bhagavan says, where the mind is completely dissolved. The mind is the originator of relative subject and object. Where the mind is completely dissolved, there the Drishya Vilaya is complete, he says. So keep that in mind. Keep the 25th talk where Bhagavan discusses Drik Drishya, Viveka, especially the Drishya Vilaya. Write it down somewhere, and that is what we are going to be taught by the Acharya also to practice, albeit with some more explanation. Acharya is going to give us some more explanation from the non-self area. Let's go into that. So we are going into today's verses. First of all, we deal with the Annamaya Kosha, or the first non-self to be discussed by the Acharya is the Annamaya Kosha. Of the 5 sheets, the Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, and Anandamaya, the gross body is created out of food. That is why it is called as Annamaya. It is created literally out of Annam, increasing by eating food and perishing when there is no food. If somebody goes on indefinite fast, we would have seen Gandhiji going on so many days, and slowly, really the other leaders feeling that the body, the jiva is going out of the body. So when not fed with food, the body is going to deconstruct. The jiva cannot remain in that home anymore. It is the sheath of the food. What it comes out as, it is a compound, a mixture of the skin, blood, flesh, fat, marrow, excreta, urine. Why it is said? It is called Navadvara Pure. The Navadvara Pure is that the city of 9 orifices, and all the 9 orifices are giving out one kind of excreta or the other, says the Bhagavatam. But then coming back here, that the important fact that Bhagavan also uses in the self-enquiry, in the work where he instructs Gambiram Seshayar, the first prose work, apparently, the first prose work should be the Bhagavan's Upadesham to Amma, where he writes gives the written instruction about the ordainer. But without going into those nitty-gritties, let's come back here that the Bhagavan also uses this particular point which Acharya mentions, that the body has no existence before birth and will not have existence after death. That means its existence itself is temporary. This is something we will forget in our day's actions. The anxiety of the day, the inattention we bring in, the preponderance of our hurry to get things done makes us forget this fundamental fact that the body is unreal. What is the test of reality? You go to talk 140, that which is real must be real always, says Bhagavan. If it is real at some times, if it is existing at some times and does not exist at all at some other times, how can you rely on it for any kind of true experience? The body has a limited experience in time, and what we are looking at in terms of liberation is an experience that is Ekam, that is Aksharam, that is Hridi Nirantaram Bhasate Swayam. That kind of experience, how can body give? Because body itself is ephemeral. It was not there before birth. It will not be there in a few years or a few days or a few moments. We don't know. That such a one we mistake as though it is real, will be acting throughout the day. The next point Acharya brings out is it undergoes change every moment. This is something we have meditated on quite constantly. How Tomchi describes that even as I speak, the body is changing. As I inhale the air from outside, my body, its molecules are changing. Old molecules, now I'll exhale, some part of me I will exhale. Next moment, some part of the world I will inhale. So the body is undergoing constant change, and there is so much percentage the food is exchanged with the outside. We saw by body weight and all that. And change can be looked at as mortality. And that is where we come to Dhyana Japa, or even the identities we have. The identities in the mind we have as a let us say the profession that we do, or let's say the family role we have, or the dharmic identity we have. These are more sustaining in nature. They are not that changing. The good, I am a good person image is more reliable happiness than the changing body. That is why dharma has been fixed. But then we will look at it in the next segment about Manomaya Kosha. That, and we will look at it threadbare as to how that is also not the experience of the self, and it is unreal. But the body, the nature of its change is phenomenal. Every moment it is changing. And such a transforming thing, such an ephemeral thing, we look to for some permanent experience. That is what we should be alert about, says the Acharya. Then the next quality, it is subject to mortality, it is subject to change. Then it is inert. It is like a pot perceived, known by something else. It is moved, controlled by some other intelligence. Whereas the self, on the other hand, is distinct from this body. The body is called as Kshetram. The self, even the relative self, is called as Kshetrajnan. And there is distinct difference between these two, which even the Bhagavad Gita asks us to know, discriminate between the Kshetram and the Kshetrajnan. The self, on the other hand, is distinct from the body. It is single, eternal, and pure. It is indestructible. Though the body and its limbs are destroyed, even if we lose some part of the body, the self continues. Bhagavan translates it even differently. He says that even when the whole body goes, the self is there. So the translation from the Shankar Math says that even those who have lost some limbs, their self is still there. Bhagavan says even when all the limbs are lost, the self is still there. The self is the witness who knows the characteristics of the body, its mode of activity, and its three states. The body doesn't have any kind of knowledge like this. Even the Pranamaya Kosha does not know. So we should understand that both the body and Pranamaya Kosha does not have any kind of wisdom, any kind of understanding. They are completely inert. They are completely used by some other intelligence. For the moment, we will call it as the mind. But to move away from the body identity, we should have this as one of the fundamental things, that it does not have any kind of discriminatory ability. So we are not going to come to the self with experience in the body. The body doesn't have that kind of intelligence. Therefore, Acharya will be talking to the mind as to why it should discriminate between the self and the non-self. The self is self-aware. It directs the body. Such being the contrast between the body and the self, can the body be the self? Udal nan endru sollalagumo. Bhagavan asks that such a body which is subject to birth and death, which is subject to changes, which is inert, which is felt and directed by some other consciousness, can it be called the self? should you call that yourself? And we do that inattentively all the time. Throughout the day, that vasana, that I am the body, is reinforced. And here the Acharya condemns, saying that only the deluded one, Bhagavan, here the English translation is, the fool thinks the body as the self. The man of wise action has some measure of discrimination, takes the body and the soul together to be the I. But the really wise man who conducts inquiry with firm discrimination knows himself as the pure Atman, pure Brahman. He doesn't confuse himself with the inert body, which is subject to mortality. And from here on, the Acharya steps up one more gear, that from the Annamaya Kosha itself, one can come to complete mukti if one understands the term properly. How he will shift to the mind identifying with the body. It is still under the Annamaya Kosha discussion itself, but the Acharya is going to step up one more gear. He is going to say that the I am the body idea is the seed of all sorrow. So this content in the Annamaya Kosha is self-contained. The discussion completes the whole inquiry. If you look at the last part, the I am the body idea is the seed of all sorrow. Therefore, just as you do not identify yourself with the shadow body, image body, dream body, or the body that you have in your imagination, cease also to associate the self in any way with the body of flesh and bones. Easier said. Why so? Why it is easier said than done? Because our tapas is not enough. Our strength of tapasya is not enough. This is the map. The map to mukti has been given in these verses. In the verse, I am the body idea. But do we have the strength of tapas to dealing like that? Bhagavan says, probably not. And how to build that strength? That is why the self-enquiry has been given. That the Drigdrishya Vilaya, it happens in its most subtlest form at the thought level. So when the Drik and Drishya appear as thinker and thought, catch it there itself. That you practice empowering yourself by Bhagavan's Saguna Swarupa, which has come to us as who am I? We cannot go to the Nirguna directly. We cannot go beyond the body, beyond the mind directly. Bhagavan has to teach us as Guru the Saguna Upasana. And who am I practice is Saguna Upasana, because who am I is a thought. Is a thought form, and it is Bhagavan's Saguna form. When it has come to someone, then Bhagavan himself has come there. And when such a person can remember that this is the Upadesha Bhagavan will be giving when he is in some difficulty, what Bhagavan will say, oh, he'll ask, for whom is this difficulty, isn't it? And when they ask, for whom is this difficulty, who am I? That means Bhagavan has come within them. The who am I has come and established itself within them. What is the assurance Bhagavan gives? Bhagavan says, the who am I thought, which is Bhagavan himself, he is saying, I will destroy all your miseries, all your other thoughts. And finally, taking you, I will merge into the self-luminous self. He says, the who am I thought, destroying all other thoughts, will merge in the jnana, will merge in the jnana agni. And when we understand, as the ones who have come through devotion to this greatest Guru of all, Bhagavan Sri Ramanacentre, we should understand he has come to us as the ever-living. So far as any living being is there, this who am I quest is going to be there. So far as Prakriti is there, Prakriti Mate has to do inquiry as to who am I. Any divine being is there, it has to do inquiry as who am I. So Bhagavan is living in Saguna form as the who am I thought in everyone. Even that is not correct, because that is going to vanish. That is also unreal. The whole quest becomes unreal in the self-luminous self. But all this struggle has to be gone through. It is not mere theory. because of the presence of the ajnana there. The I am the body idea is the seed of all sorrow. Therefore, just as you do not identify yourself with the shadow body, you don't identify with the shadow body, the image body, the dream body, or even the body which you have imagined, that also you don't identify. We are not able to identify. We come back and identify with this. Cease also to associate the self in any way with the body of bone and marrow. He says, not so easy. It requires tapasya for self-attention should be to be natural. But he has given us the Brahmastram. He has come as the Brahmastram. Make most efficient and effective use of it. Make every effort to root out this error, holding fast to the knowledge of reality as absolute Brahman. Destroy the mind and obtain supreme peace. So, though he's talking of the Annamaya Kosha, the Acharya has come to destroy the mind. If you are working on the I am the body idea, therefore there will be no more births. The Acharya says, if the Annamaya Kosha is so understood and the I am the body idea rooted out, there will be no more births. Even a learned scholar who perfectly understands the meaning of Vedanta has no scope or hope of liberation. If owing to delusion, he cannot give up the unreal body as the I. It will manifest as many problems. He will be a very, very eccentric or a great scholar, knowing so many nuances in particular fields. But somewhere it will manifest. This unintelligent identification with the body will manifest as some bondage somewhere. That is about the Annamaya Kosha. We go on to Pranamaya Kosha. Just 2 verses the Acharya has said to discriminate between Pranamaya Kosha as non-self and to differentiate it from the self. The Pranamaya Kosha is called as vital body, which it gives energy. But we should understand this energy is also unintelligent. It doesn't know what it should be worked for or what is the energy levels in other identities. The prana doesn't. Another intelligence does yama, does control, or if it is following Bhagavan, or if it is following Bhagavan, it will do the observation of the breath. The Pranamaya Kosha, it fills the Annamaya Kosha. The Annamaya Kosha seems to be moving because the Pranamaya Kosha permeates it and pervades it. This is something T.M.P. Mahadevan sir gifts us. And it is a Shastric truth that each of the subtler koshas is a higher dimension than the gross kosha. What is higher dimension? The higher dimension is inside and outside the gross dimension. The Annamaya Kosha is permeated, means the prana is inside and outside the Annamaya Kosha. If you are content in observing the breath, then you have surrendered the Indriyas automatically, the Karmendriyas, because the Jnanendriyas we haven't come yet. We have surrendered the Karmendriyas. When we surrender the breath and just merely observe the breath as Ishvara has provided us, then we are surrendering all the Karmendriyas, the actions in the Indriya Jagata. So that we should understand that the prana itself doesn't have the intelligence, but the intelligence is talked to by the Acharya to the mental being. The above mentioned sheath of food is entered into by the prana and is seen to be acting because of the vital force. It is nothing but a modification of air. The Acharya is saying that many people will tell this will cure your this organ, that will cure your that organ, but both that organ and the prana are jadam, are inert. That is why in our Shastras, whenever the childless couple goes and prays to Vishnu or to Shiva, the question asked by Shiva or Vishnu will be, do you want a child which is going to live a long life, 100 years or more, but quite dull and tamasic? Or do you want a child that is very sattvic, very intelligent, very sharp, but will live only for 20 years, 16 years, like 16 somehow is a very favorite number that we will find, only 16 years. And all of them invariably, they will opt for the one with intelligence, with sharpness and short life. Because we have to be taught that the Shastras uniformly say something, because it is addressed, it is not a story, it is something addressed for us, that what kind of life not our child should have, that for the rest of our time we are seeking. Whatever short time or long time we want. Do we want long period of life from here, lived very dully and without intelligence? Or is it all right if you have a short period with fullness of enlightenment? Now that I put it that way, we have no other way out but saying that short life with enlightenment is far better. So it is nothing but a modification of air. The prana is nothing but a modification of air. The air goes in, air comes out. It does not know its own desires or the desire of others. It is eternally dependent on the sense, self. Therefore, the pranamaya kosha is not the self. From the pranamaya kosha also you can do drishya vilaya by asking who is breathing, or just attending to the self there. Let the prana go on. You will find that the self will become subtle and you will be able to either observe thoughts or be still. Either of those two things will happen. That means you have crossed, by holding the permeating entity, you have crossed the Indriya Jagat, you have crossed the Prana Jagat. And you are now able to observe the thoughts. That's why Bhagavan will say that those who can observe thoughts don't need to do pranayama, don't need to do Indriya Nigraha, because those two energies are gross. And the one who is observing thought, no way he can get into that area. No way he can access the karmendriyas or regulate the breath energy. So Bhagavan says those who can directly observe the thought can observe. You understand, you have gone to a deeper dimension, that the already you have crossed the requirements in the karmaloka. But then since the ajnana is not gone, we will come and once again identify with the gross body. But we should have the understanding that as we become subtler, the entire dimension has changed. And that is how the self is reached and understood. And that is what the permeation means, that the manomayam, the next one, will permeate the prana also. So the manomayam, we go on from verses 169 onwards. The manomaya kosha, this is an important kosha. Before going into that, let us have a look at the power of thought, the manas. And we should understand this clearly, because the absorbing of the indriya energy and the absorbing of the prana energies are of one nature. That also involves some absorption. But the manas, what kind of dimension it is that the thought power is that it can think about this pen. The thought can think about small atom. But thought also has something that I can look back at my whole life or look ahead. Like I said, like what will I ask of Bhagavan? Will I ask for a very, very long life without drugged and unintelligent and not able to think properly, live 110 years? Or will I ask for a short life where the consciousness is completely free? Obviously, we will ask for that which is conscious, that which is fully alert, that which is able to be with him, find his feet and hold on to that. Now, having come to that, we look at the power of thought, that the power of thought can go to the end of my life here and inquire what I should ask of Bhagavan as my tenure in the body, as the nature of the mind for years. And how has been my life in the past 63 years? I can look at it in one thought. That means what? That means the thought is not bound by chronology of happenings. The senses are bound by chronology of happenings. But the thought, the mind has this freedom to go back or to go forward. But it will forget this. It ties itself, the elephant that is the mind, ties the prana shakti, ties the indriya shakti, and ties itself to chronology. Whenever it looks at itself, it will say, I am what experiences I have gathered over 63 years. The world is the set of experiences or the thoughts or the structures that have accumulated over so many billions of years. That person is similarly something which I see as accrued over so many years. Whereas the mind is actually free to go back, to go to a time where this body was not there. For instance, when I look at the anger rising in me, I understand that the anger is Nandakumar's anger, but anger is there in all human beings. The emotion is there in all human beings. So when I ask for whom is this anger, if I call it my anger, then probably 1962 Nandakumar comes. But when I understand it's a problem all of us human beings have, then the inquiry has gone 100,000 years back or a long period back. The thought can go before a time the body was there. Body was there, only this body came 1962. But anger, hatred, jealousy has been there from Cro-Magnon man's time or even before. This is my cave, that is your cave. Don't take my property. Don't take your. The I and mine has been there from commencement of time or commencement of human beings, let us say. I understand this. That magnitude of the thought is that in inquiry, I am inquiring on behalf of the Vishwamanava, the man. Now that is possible in thought. And when I sit in self-enquiry, when I look at the thoughts given by Carl Sagan, he says that all of us, the human beings, are a means for the cosmos to know itself, he says. The beings are a means for the cosmos to know itself. Now, I extend it to all sentient beings are a means for the cosmos to know itself. The sentient beings can sense their surroundings, can know their surroundings. Let us say like that. What can they sense? What can they know except Prakriti? And what are they? Are we apart from Prakriti? We are Prakriti itself. We are the cosmos itself. And when we sit in Atma Vicharam, we understand the Prakriti Mate is the one who is actually meditating. So we can make the inquiry deeper without finding the energy affecting much, the influx affecting us much. When we can expand our understanding like this, then we are all bits of star in the body, and all that we are is part of the Prakriti. And Prakriti is not merely matter, it is also consciousness. If I am there and I have consciousness, Prakriti has consciousness. Therefore, when I sit in inquiry, the Prakriti's intelligence is sitting and asking, who am I? That means thought has this ability, the magnitude into which the thought can expand itself or understand itself. That's why Bhagavan says, when this thought is understood and assimilated, and when the samudram, when the ocean of the self enters you, it is like the elephant entering the hut, says. The body being the hut, the elephant being the energy being assimilated into oneself. That is why many of the meditators recommend that you go slow. Take the influx as slowly, as steadily as possible, so that your ability, your mind is readier and readier. And in self-inquiry, the beauty is the mind is prepared slowly and the influx is allowed as per the strength of the mind. But let's just break into for 3 more minutes, some amount of Manomaya Kosha, at least 2-3 verses, let us see. The mental sheath is the mind with its organs of knowledge, the Jnanendriyas. This is the cause of the wrong concept of the self in I and mind. Nan, nannadu. Nanu, nannadu. Nan, ennudeyadu. The I and mind, this all the religions have caught on to this, that this is the root of human problem. The I and mind, I am this body, these are my properties, those I don't know, beyond my perception and socially allowed ownership. I don't know whether they are mine or not, but that is the false division into which we fall. Whereas Bhagavan says that which is ekam. There is no division as subject and object. So it is the mind that is the culprit. The Acharya has freed the Annamaya Kosha and Pranamaya Kosha by saying they don't have any kind of intelligence. Now the onus is on the mind. Manameva Karana, Bandha Mokshayoho. To be bound or to be released, Manas is the sole culprit. It is very powerful, being endowed with the diversity of thought forms, beginning with the I thought. Now this I thought, if you take the power of it, you will find in Mandukya Upanishad that the Ishvara of the dreams is called as Hiranyagarbha. His I thought is the balloon in which the whole creation is present as thoughts. So the I thought is something which can hold all other thoughts, including the thought of outside and gross. So it is Hiranyagarbha. It is potentially holding the whole creation in it. Just one thought. The one thought of the Ishvara's I. So that's why the Acharya has given special emphasis on all thoughts, all thought forms, beginning with the I thought. It fills and pervades the vital sheath. It being the mind being subtler than the Annamaya and Pranamaya. It pervades the Annamaya Kosha and Pranamaya Kosha. It is a higher dimension. The ever-placing fire of the mental sheath is consuming this whole world. This is something the Vishwarupa Darshana the Acharya is giving. That when you identify what is happening in the mind, it has already consumed the Annamaya Kosha and the world of Annamaya Kosha. It has consumed the world of energies, the electromagnetic energy, the gravity, whatever energies you find, all that has been consumed by the mind. It is all in the mind. Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha have been permeated by the mind, and it is consuming the whole world, lit by the sense organs as the sacrificial priests. The Jnanendriyas are the sacrificial feasts. The priest is getting the objects, offering it to. So in Atma Vicharan, our eyes, our ears, everything becomes sacrificial priest. The Havana, the Homa is going on continuously. I is going on. Whatever we get, we should offer it up to the I. For whom is this object? For whom is this thought? Into the ever ablaze I, we are offering. As a manifestation of that, the Acharya is giving us this beautiful image of Vishwarupa Darshana, that the whole Vishwan is actually the mind ablaze. The senses of the priests, lit by the sense organs as sacrificial priests, fed by the sense objects as the fuel, and kept ablaze by the vasanas. The vasanas are the thing that is keeping the fire of the mind ablaze. There is no ignorance apart from the mind. It is the cause of the bondage of birth and death. Mind is the cause of the bondage of birth and death, because now that it is having the freedom to permeate the Annamaya Kosha, it is the one identifying with the body as I. With the emergence of the mind, everything arises, and with its subsidence, everything ceases. This Bhagavan also uses in with the rise of the mind, everything arises, and with the subsidence, everything subsides. In verse number 7 of Ulladunarpadu, he uses that Ulagarivum, Undrai Uditodungum, and Ulagarivu Tannal, Ulirum, Ulagarivu, Tondri Marai Kidanai, Tondri Maraya Dolirum, Undrama, Aduve, Purul. He says, here in another verse, Bhagavan says, Agandai Undai, Anaitum Undagum. The mind too arises after the I thought. So we can say the Acharya has used that for the mind. The moment the mind arises, everything arises. The mind sets, everything sets. This we shift from the Krama Srishti, the chronological creation, to Yugapat Srishti. Every moment is an opportunity for liberation. When you ask, for whom is this thought? You are going towards the self that is ever liberated. When you say, let me complete that thought, we are coming into the Srishti. That is the instruction that Acharya leaves us with. We could have covered a little bit more, but that is not. We are with verse number 171 so far. Let's proceed as the verses take us in the coming weeks. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Shall we sit till 8 o'clock in Atmacharam? Revatima, can you set the time for us? Let's sit till Atmacharam till 8 o'clock. Namo Ramana. May I request our President, Dr. Sharadaka?
Namo Ramana, sir.
Namo
Namo
Ramana.
Ramana. Namo Ramana, sir.
That will be addressed by Dr. Sharadaka. Just please hold. Yeah. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining is the self in all beings. It is by that immense grace that we are continuing to meditate on the Vivekachoodamani. Time is a very strange thing. When we do not have the class or a particular experience, we feel that, oh, it is not there. But when again we are in that presence, then the time factor disappears. It is like meeting a dear one after some time. There is no gap in between. So the gap disappears once it is bridged. Similarly, our gap in the Vivekachoodamani, if there was a gap, is no longer relevant, and it is wonderful that we are back to the manana and the dhyana on this wonderful text of Vivekachoodamani. And we are now in where we are getting deep into the practice. And today, Nandakumarji beautifully took us through the drishya, the discrimination which separates the drik, valaya he called it, the discrimination, the removal of the objective layers one by one. And obviously the Annamaya, the Pranamaya, in that order we were taken through. And he said they have been dismissed, saying they have no intelligence of their own. And it is a mind which pervades all these. Manomayam tad bhuvanam vadamaha, the Ulladhanarpada. In Sanskrit, Manomayam tad bhuvanam vadamaha. All this is only pervaded by the mind, says Bhagavan. But if we look at the mind, Bhagavan says, don't look at the mind. Inquire, get into its root. Don't allow even a single thought to rise. Even as it rises, become aware, question for whom, and it will go, it will disappear, because the answer will come for me, and the next question will come, who am I? But we are looking at this moment at the Manomayam. And what is this Manomayam? There is a beautiful analogy which is given of it being a fire, a flagrant fire, and it is being fed. And there are the Indriyas which are offering oblations, and the Vasanas are eating it, and it is just ablaze. And what is it that it are the images that it holds on to? Says Bhagavan in Ulladhanarpada again, he says, Urupatri undam, Urupatri nirkum, Urupatri und miha ongum. That is the way in which he describes it. He says that they are all these are forms. That which is being offered by the Indriyas are all different kinds of forms. Of course, the visual forms are there, but there are the auditory forms, there are the olfactory forms, there are the tactile forms, there are all the forms. So, Uru, they are all different forms on which the mind is feeding. And the basis for this, he says, in the very beginning of the Ulladhanarpada, is the body thought or the body idea. Although we say there is the body, there are indriyas, there is prana, all these things are there. If one removes the body idea, without body, where can there be experience? He asks us in Ulladunathu. So if the body idea is not there, where can there be indriya? Where can there be prana? Where can there be any other thought? So that's why Bhagavan, in his experience of confronting death, questions the very truth of the body. If the body is not there, then there is no other experience. So sometimes I wonder, is the body more important or the mind more important? However, it is very clear that the body is only in the mind. So when we question the identity with the body, probably we need not even go to the next step of thinking about the indriyas, because all that is included. They are part of the body image. And if we can inquire into this or drop that concept of the body, then none of this would be there. In one instance, I think it may be the source, maybe talks with Ramanacentre, Nandakumarji will be able to tell us. Bhagavan does give this clue also to us. He says, just feel yourself, close your eyes and feel yourself from head to foot. And then he says, now drop the head to foot. So this gives us an awareness, the fact that the body itself is only a mere image. But for that, how can he say drop the head to foot? The body is only a mere boundary that we are experiencing. We do not experience the body as the body. Because unless there is pain in some part of the body, we don't remember that part of the body at all. We don't remember anything about the body. Unless there is some physical or physiological experience which is happening, which is overriding, there will be no thought of the body. And if we are caught in a very strong or intense emotion, then also there will be no thought of the body. So it is very clear to us that the body is only in the mind. But it is one of the overriding attachments, or the mind is functioning because of the hold or the grasp which it has on a body image. This grasp continues in dreams also, where we have another body, not the waking body. Also, when Nandakumarji said that though we have body in dream and other experiences, we in our imagination also we can have, but when we wake up, we believe this body alone is real and all other experiences relate to this body. But in our thought, from moment to moment, we are experiencing different bodies, not only in the dream. When we sit down and we have thoughts, each moment we are having a different thought, we are experiencing a different body which pertains to that thought. So if we look at our body being the truth, in one sense, we imagine that it is common, it is one, it is singular, but actually it is multiple. And similarly with all the prana experiences, because though the prana is one, depending on which part of the body it is pervading, or where the emphasis is, or if there is any imbalance, again our experiences are varied. And when we come to the mind, there also our experiences are varied because the identification is with various objects. But when Bhagavan brings all this into one focus, and Nandakumarji mentioned the Yugapat Shrishti, the entire creation coming from that one Jiva, that Eka Jiva, that one feeling of individuality is creating the entire cosmos. So when we get back to that, then it is possible to unify the attention and take it to the source. Otherwise, the way it is dissipated, the ways in which it can be dissipated are unending and infinite. So this is the great grace of Bhagavan, and this is the point to which Acharya is bringing us in enquiry by allowing us to transcend all that with which the mind is associating itself, saying, this is I, and bringing it back to its core nature. We are taken back there, and as we move with the verse, our attention also leaves the periphery and gets back with the grace and the power of the teaching into its core. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramanaka. I am not able to recall.
Because we had a brief discussion, you remember, during one of our workshops in Tiruvannamalai. I don't know where I read it, but it is there. And later also you and I, we had a discussion, and you said that is helpful in it. It was found helpful by me also, I said, but it was not sustained. It could
Typically, Shavasana is the yogasana where one can immediately apply that. One has a feeling of the whole thing, then you can detach it. But I am not able to recall where we have read it.
Maybe it's probably not in talks also.
Probably we can find out. Yes.
Mm-hmm. No, it's just to say that our body identification is very actually not the way we imagine it is.
Actually, it is a Buddhist meditation also. In Vipassana, they make us do what you have said. That they make us observe the whole body and observe it without like or dislike. And the idea being that then the consciousness detaches itself from that form. But we don't observe our body like that. We are so much outgoing that no one observes their form totally like that. So definitely it is a practical thing. What you have mentioned is a very, very practical thing. But I am not able to immediately tell this.
Yes, but it is not to be practiced by us, but just as a thought that it only brought me the awareness that actually my body image, what I think I am feeling as my body, is not what it is. I don't really see myself as this physical image, but I see myself as a sort of a subtle boundary. That's what I felt through this exercise. And so it even makes it clearer that it's only in the mind.
Correct.
That is what it helped me to understand.
Body
not
doesn't.
As a practice, not as a practice. Just to.
No, actually, it is a practice, spiritual practice in Buddhism, what you are saying. So it is a legitimate practice, and I feel it will be useful because nobody is aware of their body like that. And then detaching should be a matter of course. Like who is looking like this, we can always ask.
Namo Ramana.